Hi guys, welcome to the Hustle to Wealthy podcast episode. Super excited today. I have Jackson Milan with me, and for those who have not heard of Jackson yet, well, you're in for a treat. So Jackson has been in this industry for a very long time, has been a financial planner, but also like really diving deep into working with hundreds of entrepreneurs, just like you and I, who are all about going from life sentence to lifestyle and tweaking their business that they already have to get to where they exactly wanted to go. So, Jackson, welcome. How
Thanks
are
for
you?
having me. I'm looking forward to our chat today.
Yeah, me too. I love the Australian accent. I'm following a couple of you guys from Australia, and I'm like, that accent is pretty fun to listen to. I was like, oh, now I know what people mean
We
by
don't have an
Australia.
accent. You have an accent.
I definitely have one, yeah, but absolutely love it. So, Jackson, I briefly mentioned it, but walk us through who do you work with? How do you do it, and how do you help business owners?
Yes, so I'm Jackson Milan. I'm also known as the Wealth Mentor, and I've been involved in the wealth and business strategy space for over 16 years now. I originally got into this space because of my parents. My parents were business owners, and they really struggled with money. They were very, very good at what they did, but they never had any excess funds to be able to build wealth with. There was just enough to survive. And after years of them telling me that I needed to work hard if I wanted to be successful, I kind of realized that something was amiss, and I realized that it's because they didn't understand the language of money, and they could never make money work for them. They were working for money. So when I started my career, I started training to become a financial advisor, and I became disheartened pretty early in the journey because I realized that most financial advisors only want to work with people who are already wealthy to make them wealthier, or they wanted to sell commission-based products to people like my parents who, quite frankly, didn't need them. So I almost quit. But as I was kind of pondering my other opportunities, I had this kind of fleeting thought that I'm like, okay, well, if you don't try and fix this, Jackson, who will? So I took on the responsibility of trying to work with people who are just starting their wealth journey, and potentially people who are in a bad financial position, and helping them lay those foundations so they could work towards creating financial freedom. And I'm very fortunate to have helped my clients build over $2 billion in combined wealth, and I've been able to help thousands grow and scale successful and profitable lifestyle businesses along the way. So our ideal clients are SMEs. Now, we kind of say that our clients know how to make money, but they struggle to know how to keep it. And we help them implement the right financial operating system in their business, maximize their cash flow and their profits, and then systematically take that business profit and turn it into passive wealth. And it's a very simple system, but most of our clients appreciate how basic and straightforward it can be, so they can then focus their time on what they really enjoy.
Yeah, I love it. I think this is where we're so aligned in values, right? Like not going just after the people who are already rich, but like bringing that education and sharing it with everyday people. Because like I'm a true believer that wealth education and wealth should be a right to all and not just a privilege to a few. But unfortunately, this is not where the scales are. So we are shifting exactly like we're doing exactly the same thing, going like, how do we help these everyday people and business owners, right, to transition from working hard and working for their money and counting every hour to how do they transition so that money makes money for them, right? So it's perfect. So when we dive into it, can we jump into like, can you give me a little bit of a definition of what your definition is for hustle and then wealthy? Like, what are the what do those two terms mean to you?
I was going to start by saying I fucking hate hustle. The idea of hustling makes my skin crawl. And the reason for it is because I observed my parents hustling. My old man, I saw him work 16-hour days, 7 days a week for as long as I could remember. And his mission was to work his ass off, squirrel away every last red cent that he possibly could in order to retire at 65 and then enjoy the fruits of his labor. The very, the unsexy 40-20 trap where you work 40 years and then you potentially enjoy 20 if you're lucky. Now, in 2017, my old man was 66 and he was diagnosed with late stage pancreatic cancer and he was given weeks to live. He was supposed to be 1 year into living the dream, but that dream was taken away from him very, very suddenly. And as he lay there on his deathbed clinging to life, he regretted a lot of things. And he gave me one last piece of advice. And that piece of advice was every single person in this world has two lives, and their second life starts when they realize they only have one. And he died shortly thereafter. Now that was crushing for me because I obviously lost my best friend, but it was the best gift that he could have ever given me because it helped me adopt my mantra, which is live for today and plan for tomorrow. Like as a business owner, we get into business because we want to create freedom and flexibility. But unfortunately, through social conditioning and through observing our parents and people around us, we fall into this self-imposed financial prison. We create these golden handcuffs where we have directly aligned our ego and our validation in the world with how hard we work, which is bullshit. The idea of being a business owner, from by my definition, is disconnecting your income from your effort. And that is true freedom. And I've developed a mantra, which is called the F4. So my idea of the opposite of hustle is creating a business that produces 400 grand a year in profit or more, working 4 days a week and 44 weeks a year, and fast tracking your way to $4 million in net wealth. And if you could do those four things, then you can run the marathon for the rest of your life. You never have to retire because you have freedom and flexibility. You have your cake and you can eat it too. And I'm very fortunate that I've been able to create this level of financial freedom and help many of our clients do the same and escape all of this hustle bullshit.
Yeah, look, I love that you say this. We are not a fan of the word hustle either, but it's reality, right? Like for the last few years, it's been such a trend. And I remember, like, I even had business coaches who were like, all you have to do is work harder and hustle. And, like one more day. And I'm going, no, that's not what you need to do. This is just like, I'm allergic to that word like you, because with my family, it was exactly the same thing. Both my parents worked hard all their life so that they could provide us a better future. And I really appreciate what my parents did for us. But it also gave me that insight that I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to spend all my life working to then maybe being able to do what I love when it's too late, when my body is broken and I'm, sore and in pain. So totally get it. Absolutely. Um, so when we talk about going from, like, I love your four F formula, the four fours. So when people first join you, or business owners first join you, and they are in this lifestyle business, how do you get them to jump into the mindset shift from we are conditioned to work hard all our days, not feeling guilty, because that's what we're experiencing with our clients, right? They come in and when they start reducing their hours or time, they get stressed because they feel so guilty of not working hard for their money. How do you help them transition from that mindset to a wealthy and abundant mindset where it's okay to be just enjoying life?
It's really interesting, right? And I think the root cause of this comes down to the fact that most business owners treat their business as if it were the destination when it should be the vehicle. The business is the best wealth creation vehicle that you can have. Because there are very few other vehicles in which you could be actively involved in and manufacture wealth as quickly and systematically as you can with business. Now, of course, it comes with risks, but you look at any rich list in the world, and the vast majority of the people that are there because of business. Now, the important thing is getting unemotional about the business. We need to make sure that the business is different from ourselves as an entity. And I see so many business owners using their business as a vehicle of personal gratification and satisfaction. And for that reason, they look for kicks in their business. And when their business gets to a point where it no longer relies on them, they've got team and they're no longer the hero to the story, and they're no longer directly working with clients, they see that as a direct attack on themselves as a human being, which is a hard pill to swallow. So what we do is we work on helping them define the destination outside of their business. And we create what we call the 20-year roadmap. We help our clients document all of their goals, dreams, and aspirations, both lifestyle and financial, outside of the business over 1, 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. And the interesting thing around this, Paulina, is that when we first talk them through this, the first things that come to mind are all business milestones. And I'm like, no, not business. What do you really want? And then once they give themselves the space, vast majority of people go, oh shit, I don't even know what I want. They're so influenced by social media and keeping up with the Joneses and all of these societal pressures, that they've never given themselves the space to ask what they truly want. And to be fair, I was guilty of this for a very long time. I was running other people's races. I was wearing the fancy three-piece suits and the expensive watch and driving the Mercedes AMG and doing all of these things because I thought that's what success looked like. But for some reason, it never felt good. And it wasn't until I developed this exercise and I used it as a way of getting crystal clear on what I wanted that I started manifesting my dream life. I spent a year traveling around Australia in a four-wheel drive while my business continued to grow and scale. I bought my dream home and I created my dream animal sanctuary. It was my passion project for my whole life, but I'd never created the space to even think about doing it. I've now rescued over 100 animals. I've been able to create an 8-figure business whilst living in far north Queensland, working part-time, and I now take this year I took off 12 weeks, and my business has continued to grow and thrive because of this exercise of redefining my business as a vehicle and getting crystal clear on my destinations. And when we implement this for our clients, it's like a light switch. It changes the whole dynamic of how they treat their business moving forwards, and it's a very, very powerful shift.
Yeah, I love it. We talk about, so your roadmap, we talk about the end game. What is it that you want to do when money and time wasn't um, when money on time wasn't really a matter, right? And you had enough of both. And it's quite interesting because 99% of our clients always say, I would do exactly the same thing. I just want to replace my income,
Yes.
right? Like that's the first sentence that they go, I just want to replace income. And then we go, yeah, but do you realize that not working for 7 days brings so many more expenses, right? And what will that look like? Will you go, and we start with like very little things, right? Like, will you go to the gym? And if you go to the gym, what would that look like, right? And will you go 3 times or 5 times a week? And so it snowballs from little things. But I agree, so hard to think of what will I do outside of what we are indoctrinated with, with that, like we have to work hard, we have to hustle, we have to be seen as we are working all the hours in the world, right? I've had the same thing. I spent way too many hours being um, more the martyr, believing that this is what I need to do rather than having to do it, right? So how do you take
And that's the hard part.
yeah, sorry.
It's the hard part because I often feel that so many people keep themselves busy because they're not prepared to confront that space of actually thinking about what they truly want. And this just becomes a way of keeping their mind occupied so they don't marinate in their own pain of acknowledging what it is that they actually want. Why are they here? What do they want to stand for? But although it's super confronting, it's liberating once you get through it.
So, do you have a tip for someone who's really struggling and going, I can't think outside of my business goals, or, can't think of 5 or 10, 20 years goals because I'm still trying to survive the next 12 months of that life sentence that they've built?
Yeah, definitely. The interesting thing is that I have ADHD, so I struggle with deferring gratification. I always have. And for many years, I was terrible with money. I fell into the same habits and behaviors that my parents had. I accumulated a lot of debt, particularly when my dad was sick. I inherited the family mortgage. At that particular point in time, I had a business that wasn't doing so well. It was just when it rains, it pours. And I found myself in kind of multi six figures of bad debt. And I'd even pondered going bankrupt. I'm just like, stuff it, go bankrupt, wait 7 years for my record to be wiped clean and then start again. Like, what's the big deal? And I was at this crossroads. And I said, okay, I'm either going to hit that big red reset button and wait, or I'm going to work my way through this situation. And I went to go and investigate another way. I'm like, I struggled with this deferring of gratification thing. At the time, I didn't know I had ADHD. And I discovered this framework around the marshmallow experiment. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
Yeah, but
And for those of you that know,
share it with the speakers, with the
I
listeners.
will.
Yeah.
Definitely. So the marshmallow experiment was a study that was done by Stanford University to work out whether people are born with the ability to defer gratification or whether they learn it. So they took 4 and 5-year-old kids, they put them in a room, and they gave them a marshmallow. And they said, hey, I'm going to leave the room, and if you don't eat this marshmallow, when I come back, I'll give you a second marshmallow. And they left for 15 minutes. And they worked out that 2 out of the 3 kids would eat the marshmallow, some at 1 minute, some at 5 minutes, some at 14 minutes and 50 seconds. But 2 out of 3 would eat the marshmallow, and 1 out of 3 would wait. They could visualize the value of getting an extra marshmallow. They could endure the pain of being there bored while they were waiting for the person to come back. But they knew they were going to get that second marshmallow. Now, I was the 2 out of 3. I would have eaten the marshmallow before the person stopped speaking, right? But my neurodivergent mind said, who wrote those rules? Who said that you either get one marshmallow an hour or two later? What if I owned the marshmallow factory? What if I could have a marshmallow now and I could have a marshmallow later and I could have as many marshmallows as I wanted? So I had an epiphany that it wasn't an absence of means. It wasn't an absence of marshmallows. It wasn't an absence of money that was the issue. It was an absence of planning. Because if I'd only planned well enough, if I only understood what I wanted and the resources required to have everything that I wanted, I would never have to make a scarcity-based choice. Now, the first time I did that 20-year roadmap, I stared at a blank page for 4 hours. Nothing. I don't know what I want. I set a recurring reminder. A week later, I did it again. I got my 1 year. A week later, I got my 5 year. A week later, I got the 10 year. A week later, I got the 15 year. A week later, I got the 20 year. It was vague. It was superficial. It wasn't me, but it was a version. It was a start. And I have done this every 90 days for the last decade. And without fail, I've achieved 90+% of every single goal that I've set on there. And things get added, things get removed, things get shifted, things get changed. But the things that I truly want, I achieve. So to answer your question, the aim is to start and to persevere, because when you create that dedicated space and you continue to repeat it, you'll be incredibly surprised what comes out for you.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's the big thing to realize, right? There isn't just one version of your end game or your roadmap. Like there is many, many versions as you grow as a human being and you get educated and you learn more and more and go through the seasons of your life. You add and you take away, right? So it's never a set goal where you go, okay, I've written this 20-year plan and now I have to stick to it. So what's one of the fun things in your plan that is no longer there, that might have been there and ended up being actually not that relevant to you?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? For many years, I had kind of vanity things. Like, for example, my dream car, which ever since I was a little kid, was a 1996 Dodge Viper GTS Coupe in blue with white racing stripes. Okay. And it's my dream car. I love it. And instead, for the same value, because the car's worth about $150,000, I bought a Toyota Troop Carrier that I set up in order to, as an overlanding vehicle, so my partner and our 2 dogs could spend a year traveling around Australia. Same value, same financial impact, but the utility was fundamentally different. Because for anyone who could wonder, you can't tour around Australia in a 1996 Dodge Viper. It's not going to be very comfortable. It's only a 2-seater. It would be a horrible experience. So the important thing, and I think you hit on a really important point, Paulina, is that your plan should not be static. Because the biggest misconception people have is they say, well, I don't know what I want in the future, or what I want now is inevitably going to change. Of course it is. However, should you plan for nothing, or should you just use these things as placeholders that hold the space for whatever it is that you're going to want at that point in time, and you just repurpose those resources or means, like what I did with the Dodge Viper to the Toyota Land Cruiser, right? It's about choosing the appropriate vehicle that gets you to the destination. And as long as you've got clarity and you've got flexibility in that plan, then you get what you want all the same.
Yeah. Totally love it. I love the keeping a placeholder in there for something of that value and then recreate it in that value, right? Because we always say you can't throw an arrow and call whatever it hits the target, right? You have to have a target to make sure that you know what you're hitting. So absolutely.
Yes.
Now, so we're talking business here, right? We have very much like our listeners are life sentences to lifestyle. So going really like they created a business like in their minds that, like you said, gave them time freedom, that where they could be their own boss, write their own hours, and spend their quality time with family and loved ones. But in reality, they build this machine, right? This cash eating machine, as you call it, or as we call it, like, like that life sentence, where it became so complex and so difficult that they are like now sitting going, is it even all worth it? They might be hitting the revenues, right? Their Stripe account is going up. That's smiling, but all their cash flow is eaten away and the profits margins are a lot less than desirable, I would call it, right? So, what's your thoughts? So, they've got this roadmap. They are very clear on what they want over the next 20 years. And if they don't, they are working on it. What's like the steps or the process you would take someone through to start working on their business for two reasons? One, to realize, is that business even the business that they want to go into? And two, if it is the business that they want to stay in, how do they transition slowly out so that they can hit that force formula?
Yes, great. I love it. So if we think about the center of what we're trying to achieve is that F4, right? And there's really three problems or three frustrations or challenges that people need to overcome in business. It's quite simple. They either don't have a plan to get to the F4, they don't have the cash to get to the F4, or they don't have the consistency to get to the F4. Those are fundamentally the three issues that we see small businesses facing. Now, the shift needs to be that the reason why most people don't get there is because they're doing the wrong things, right? They're not focusing on the things that are actually moving the needle forwards, making the boat go faster in the right direction. And there's basically only three things that get us there. There's more profit. We need to make sure that we've got the right positioning in the marketplace where we can be the first and logical best choice in our market, because being the best in your market, being the first, being the only, guarantees that you will not be made redundant by AI, by new competitors in the marketplace, because you've always got a competitive edge. Two, you need to have premium pricing, because I see so many business owners pricing based on their self-limiting beliefs. The biggest limiting factor in their business is them, and they're still charging based on their version of themselves 10 years ago. And inflation and costs of doing business have eroded your margins. And then the third part is we need to create a mechanism for consistent cash flow, because I see business owners on a roller coaster of cash flow, and it's usually because of a split of bandwidth. Wherever their attention goes, the cash flows, right? And that's often a roller coaster. So we fix that, and that gives us our profit operating system. Next is time, because once we've got profit, we've traded time for money. We need to now trade money for time. And we need to start elevating ourselves in our business. And I'm sure you've heard of the cliche of you need to work on your business, not in it. It gets thrown around so much. Most business owners don't even know how to do it. And there's three things. Your first thing you need to do is you need to create robust. They don't know what it means. And the first part is you need to create robust rules. What is your commandments for how you show up in your business as a CEO? And you need to hold yourself to the highest standard, because the business will never outgrow you. Two, you need to have seamless systems, right? You need to take those commandments and you need to use that to do the things that are going to drive the business forwards. And you need to systemize yourself out of everything else. And then you need to design a dream team, because you need A players on the bus and you need them on the right seat of the bus. And what this requires you to do is to understand, what does that dream team look like that's going to get you from A to Z? And then lastly, we need to create freedom. And freedom is created by protecting profits, because we need to make sure we're putting profit first as a business owner, not treating it as a byproduct. Then we need to distribute dependable dividends, because you deserve to get two paychecks in your business. You deserve to be paid for working in your business, and you deserve to be paid for being a shareholder for the risk that you take in your business. And then lastly, we need a smart succession plan, because we should be building a business for an inevitable exit. Even if you have no intentions to ever sell, your business should always be ready for sale, because you don't want to sell your business until one day you do. And in 9 times out of 10, in every single situation I've seen it, the business is not ready for sale. It either needs to be sold at a substantial discount or it can't be sold at all. So if we build a business with smart succession in mind, we actually build a business that you don't want to sell. And that's actually the most valuable business, because an acquirer doesn't want to buy a job. They want to buy an asset. and they ideally want to buy a compounding asset that provides them with leverage and upside on their investment. And that's a business that you love. So this is our system.
Yeah, I love it. I actually believe that there should be three ways of you getting paid, not two, by the way. That's my belief. So I go, you get paid as the employee for doing the day-to-day work that you might be still doing at that given time. You get paid as the director or the manager from a management perspective to put strategy in place, and then you get paid as the shareholder for taking on the risk and investing into your business. But
I
that's
love it.
my
Beautiful.
definition of this. That's how I share it usually, and I truly believe it because even if you're in a lifestyle business that you truly love, like we are lucky we're doing this. I still do things like that, like chatting to you, right? Which is stuff that I love doing that isn't necessarily management as shareholder. It's something that I'm passionate about and I want to deal with. So I think for me, there's three levels of payment per se. But hey, two or three is always more than the one that you may or may not be getting right now, right? While everyone else is being paid.
Exactly. 100%.
I love it. So while we're talking about protecting profits and doing, sharing, where do you think are from a mindset perspective, most business owners that you are working with stuck? In which space?
Yes. The big thing is that there's a lot of scarcity in their financial operating system, which basically means that they're paying everybody else first and they are blindfolded financially. Like the analogy I like to use is imagine that you're an athlete and you're going to run a race and you're expecting to win with a blindfold on and with one arm and one foot tied behind your back. Like you are not going to win. And I see so many business owners who say, I'm not a financial person, so I abdicate financial responsibility to my accountant or my bookkeeper or my financial advisor or whoever it might be because they don't understand the numbers. And no, like you can't do that. Like no one will love your money as much as you do. You have a responsibility to yourself in order to understand what the story the numbers are telling you. And sure, you can outsource things, but you can only outsource things from a position of knowing. Because if you don't know, then those people are either worst case going to take advantage of you, or best case, they're going to speak to you like you're a 3-year-old child, which means you can't have a valuable discussion at any level because they can't communicate with you. And the big issue here, Paulina, is that for most people, like they treat this as if they're trying to learn German, right? And they've gone and done one lesson and then they're upset with themselves because they don't speak it fluently. Like you've got to do your 100 hours minimum to be better than 98% of the population at anything. And that starts with the numbers in your business. So that's the first part. The second part is that business owners are caught up in making fake excuses for themselves that are a disguise for money mismanagement. They say, I'm reinvesting back into my business. No, well, show me. If you're truly reinvesting back in your business, how much did you put in? What was your risk premium that you were aiming for above and beyond your risk-free rate of return? For what time period did that investment return to you and what was your ROI? And I'm typically met with blank stares. And I'm like, no, you just said that because you're covering your cash flow shortfalls and you're just trying to make yourself feel better saying you're reinvesting. It's bullshit. Because if you can't invest back into your business for a predictable return, there are thousands of other investment vehicles that could be completely set and forget for you to go and invest in and get a better return.
Yeah, we're experiencing a slight delay, so just so you're aware, we'll cut this out. But here, so how do you feel about this advice that so many business coaches give and are like cringe every time? This is my disclaimer here. Cringe every time I hear it is reinvest everything that you're making back into your business.
It's complete and utter bullshit. And the reason for it is like there's a couple of iterative phases, right? The first phase is proving your business model. right? And that does require capital depending on the type of business that you're running, right? It would be remiss of me to say that you're going to go and start a product business, let's say an e-commerce business, and you're not going to buy any inventory, you're not going to invest in building a good website, you're not going to set aside money for paid ads to be able to prove the business model, right? If you're running a service business, you could probably do it pretty lean, but it does require some capital to start, right? But the aim of the game is just enough capital to prove the business model. And good businesses fuel themselves. Now, if we are going to reallocate capital back in that business, your step number one should be, how do I build that into the business model? So let's say, for example, I'm planning for a 30% profit. I'm going to take 15% of that profit and I'm going to reinvest that back into team, infrastructure, paid marketing, whatever that might be, so I can grow at a faster rate. But the remaining 15% should be used to build a war chest or distributed to shareholders. Then we get to a point where we're at a growth phase, and that business should be able to perpetuate its own growth, right? Because let's look at even on the stock market. There's two types of companies. There's a growth company and there's a value company. A growth company is a cash-eating monster. And in bull markets, where there's free-flowing capital and there's high consumer sentiment, people are throwing money at those growth companies hand over fist because of the exponential growth. However, when the tables turn and we find ourselves in a bear market where sentiment falls, when capital dries up, the vast majority of those businesses who don't shift from a growth to a value business go broke. And on the other side, a value business is a business that has true intrinsic value. It has a sound value proposition. It has healthy, consistent profits. It ideally has an economic moat. It's got great cash flow and liquidity. It's got its own war chest to prepare against the unforeseen, and it pays money to shareholders consistently on an ongoing basis. Now, I don't know about you, but I know the business that I want to be in. I want to be in that value business because that's the one that stands the test of time through any economic cycle. And that's what a small business should be.
Awesome. So let's talk about your next 90 days. A little bit of a shift. So, and I think part of it, I do want to touch base on the 100 books you want to write before you die. So, how many books do you have so
Yes.
far?
I've got 3 at the moment, and I've got 3 that are already in draft that we're in the process of getting ready to publish. The interesting thing, I've got ADHD, so I typically write a book in a week or two. It's very, very quick. I hate the idea of rereading my books. I want to move on to the next thing. So the thing that I've really struggled with that slowed me down is finding a team that allow me to get my drafts refined and out into the world as quickly as possible without my ongoing involvement. So I'm working on building a system around that at the moment. And I'm very confident that moving forwards, I can publish 3 to 6 books a year. So once I nail that workflow, so that's kind of my next 90 days of how do I create that workflow that allows me to get my IP out into the world and start building my legacy. And that's how I kind of want to be remembered when I'm no longer of this earth, is for the knowledge and the impact that I leave behind. And I'm very much driven by how do I leave the world in a better place than I found it.
And the 100 books is the way you're planning on doing this. Plus your farm,
Exactly. So
obviously, with all the... Sorry.
Yeah, the farm with all of the animals and the books. So I spent last weekend mapping out my 100 books. So I've got all of the titles and I've got all of the books that I want to write. I built an algorithm for how long it typically takes me to write a book based on the number of words and my typing rate. And I mapped out the milestone of when I need to get every single book published. So I've got a plan now. I've got clarity around what I need to do. And I've also got a framework around how I write those books. So I'm planning to write my next one over the Christmas period, and I'm excited to get my books released at a much faster rate. And then, of course, in my spare time, we've got an animal sanctuary. We've rescued over 100 animals, and our plan is to continue to grow the sanctuary. So that it feeds the soul and it lights me up. I'm very fortunate for where I'm able to live and the impact that I'm able to have.
So over the next 90 days, how would, like, if someone goes, okay, I want to make myself a plan for the next 90 days so that I can like start momentum. What would you like, what insights would you give them if they wanted to start a 90-day plan?
Yes. The challenge with most 90-day planning is that it is generic and it's a one size fits all approach. I think what's important is that you need to develop a plan based on the lowest hanging fruit for you. So I've actually developed a 40-point financial performance scorecard, which is basically the top 40 things that business owners need to do in order to create financial freedom. And the scary thing is the average score is about 18 out of 40, which means most business owners are below average. And the idea there is that it doesn't matter what your score is. Like, I don't care if it's 5 or if it's 35. But what that will allow you to do is it gives you transparency of, okay, well, there's these 1, 2, or 3 things that I think I could turn from a no to a yes in the next 90 days. How do I build a plan that's focusing on progress over perfection? And that's where I start all of my planning. My number one tool that I have in my arsenal that's allowed me to build an 8-figure business is reflection. And it's brutal, honest reflection. I look at what was my perspective, what did I try and achieve over a certain period of time, what was my reality, and then what was the overlap, and what's the reason why I didn't get a perfect overlap where I didn't achieve everything that I wanted, and what did I do well and what could I do better. And using diagnostic scorecards is basically one of the key tools. It's the cornerstone in all of my 90-day planning. So I'm happy to share that with you guys as a resource. If you guys go to wealthhealthcheck.com.au, and there's an access to all of a whole lot of tools, the scorecard, and it'll give you some of the frameworks that you need to improve your 90-day planning moving forward, both personally and also in your business.
Awesome, love it. And if you didn't quite catch that, there will be a link below so you can just click straight through to follow Jackson on this. So shifting away from business, because business is only one side, right? Like we just spent the last half an hour talking about the business being a vehicle to get you to where you want to go, right? And I 100% with you agree. Most entrepreneurs build a business out of heart because they love it and it's their baby. And then it no longer as an investment tool, it becomes such an emotional attachment that we can't clearly see, is it performing the way we want it to. So now we're shifting away from that, and I love it, shifting to it being the vehicle to get you there. The other side to this is, and I think both of us work in that space, is have different approaches, but same space, is around, okay, how do you make your money work harder for you so that you're building literally legacy wealth that isn't all about you being in the business, but that will continue to grow even when you are no longer in the business. Share with us a little bit of the insights of why it is so important to have an investment plan or a financial plan in place outside of the business.
Yeah, I think the big part here is business is inherently risky. And there were some statistics that showed that 94% of small businesses are either not sold for a profit or not sold at all. And this is a scary statistic because so many people believe their business is worth something. However, that's largely emotional equity. And there is this huge disparity between what they think their business is worth and what it is actually worth. And the risk that we run is that we've put so much blood, sweat, and tears into our business. We build it up over a lifetime, and then we sell it, and it either doesn't give us the amount of asset value that we need in order to create financial freedom, or it produces no asset value because potentially it has no value. And the aim of the game should really be to buffer against that, is that to align with not reinvesting back into the businesses we already spoke about, we need to have a mechanism to take our business profit and turn that into passive wealth. Now, I've got a very old school methodology around this. It's a very tried and true, very basic philosophy. And the reason for this is because I am not passionate about money and investing, which might be surprising for you. I'm not an active manager. I'm not a speculator. I'm not a trader. I want things to be boring. And this comes from a mentor that I had who was a very successful fund manager who managed multiple billions of dollars in assets under management. And one of the most valuable lessons that he told me was, Jackson, play with your partner, not your portfolio. And what he meant by that is don't look for your kicks in your money management because it can get addictive. It really can. So I try and be very, very boring in terms of my investment philosophy. So basically, my philosophy is that you can build wealth in 3 ways. You build wealth by acquiring businesses. So I'm big in acquiring businesses. I've done over 8 figures in business acquisitions. We continue to buy businesses. in the multi-seven figures each year. It's a big part of our strategy. And the reason for it is because we inherently understand business, we know how to look for good business, and we know how to enhance the intrinsic value of our group. There is a lot of risk involved. It is very time consuming. It is very expensive, but it's a great way to build wealth. I think there was an interesting statistic that said the vast majority of millionaires are property investors and the vast majority of billionaires are private equity investors and venture capitalists. So hence why we're playing in that space. The second way to build wealth is property. And my philosophy in property is that we buy good quality blue chip property where affluent people are going to want to live long term. I believe that there's 5 key fundamentals around property. There's net migration. There needs to be more people moving somewhere than are moving away. There needs to be diverse employment where we're not reliant on any single or multiple sectors. We've got diversified sectors. So if one sector declines, it's not going to impact the property market. 3, there needs to be infrastructure spending, both public and private. The government needs to be spending money to improve livability. Roads, public transport, hospitals, schools. But there also needs to be private dollars going there by way of restaurants and retail and entertainment, because that's what keeps people somewhere. That's what makes it livable. 4, we need to make sure that there is a limited future supply. So I only buy in areas that have restrictions in terms of zoning, so you can't build massive towers. And I only buy in areas that are infill land, where in order for you to build a dwelling, you need to knock something down. So we never buy on the fringes of suburbs where they can just build house and land packages as far as the eye can see. And then 5th, we want to understand affordability. And that's not what we can afford as affluent business owners. It's about what that local population can afford, because property is about supply and demand, right? If there's more demand than there is supply, prices will go up until the cap of affordability of what people can either afford to spend or what the banks will lend them. And if we understand those 5 fundamentals, we can have peace of mind and certainty around those assets performing over the long term. And then the last factor is the share market. And I personally don't stock pick. I invest in low-cost index funds and exchange-traded funds because I prefer to bet on markets, not companies. And I was looking at a statistic recently that showed over a 50-year period of time, the S&P 500, over 78% of those companies over that 50-year period of time went bankrupt. So by betting on the index, or buying the whole index, which is all of the 500 companies in that exchange, or any index for that matter, you get the average of however those companies perform. So we don't have the specific company risk that is associated with whether that company performs or doesn't over time. It's very, very vanilla. It's very boring, but it works for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, why wouldn't you want to do sometimes boring, right? We are the opposite, and I think this is why we have the same values, the same foundations, working on, educating our customers on very similar things or the same things. Even like some of the terminology is very, very similar. I mean, you can't reinvent it over and over again, right? But we are the opposite. We go definitely have the foundations in these 3, but then how do you take a slight portion of your portfolio? We're not talking here large, just slight portion of the portfolio, and generate something where you have consistent monthly cash flow coming in as another strategy into cash flow strategy into your life, right? And so I love it. I love the fact that, and I'm like, look, you've proven it to yourself, to your clients, right? So it's like, do what works for you. So how do you deal with customers who are like excited and made money in Bitcoin or made money in the markets that you do not play in? Do you tell them to get out,
right?
or do you tell them to allocate a certain percentage?
Definitely not. Our job is not to play God and pass judgment, right? Our job is to educate and help people understand the relationship between risk versus return, right? And when we understand, let's talk about some financial concepts here. Standard deviation, which is basically the correlation between the risk and the volatility that we have over time, and the relationship between risk versus return. We know that risk is a spectrum, and we can have all of our money sitting in cash, which gives us certainty because we have capital preservation, but inflation is going to guarantee that money gets eroded. So by default, you're losing. And then we've got the complete opposite end of the spectrum, which from my perspective is, say, more speculative or emerging investments, which there can be tremendous upside, but there can also be tremendous downside. And from my perspective, my aim is to work out what is the least amount of risk that a particular client needs to take to get to the outcome that they want, whilst preserving their peace of mind and certainty along the way. And for some people, for example, I was chatting to a mutual friend of ours just before we jumped on this, and we're having a little bit of a joke because I think you guys caught up recently, and you said, "Don't tell Jackson that you invest in crypto; he's going to get upset with you." But I said to him, "Mate, that's fine as long as you understand the risk versus return and you have a strategy. You're not just closing your eyes and throwing darts at a dartboard. There's definitely ways to make money there. And as long as you've got peace of mind and certainty, the biggest factor here, in my opinion, is understanding behavioral finance. Because there are certain individuals who, investing in those things without understanding the factors, when the market does fall and they do experience the volatility, they can't stomach it and they end up crystallizing their losses and end up doing more harm than good. And as long as you understand what you're getting yourself into, there's a place for every asset class, depending on your own personal preferences, as long as you've got the right education and support from someone like yourself.
Yeah, and look, this is what I think this is the key, right? It's not so much about which market is the right one, should you go into property or active trading. And you said something slightly interesting and intriguing to me. You said that business building or investing in businesses is risky. So to me, when I think about risk, it's all about the education. If you understand, it's the same thing with the crypto market or the property market, right? To me, it's not about so much the investment itself is risky. It's the risk lies in the fact that you don't have the education or the understanding of what the market is going to do. And that's the risk, right? So if you are in a market that you like truly understand, you understand the risk factors, the levers to pull that can be pulled. Any investment can be risky or not risky, right? Depending on your level of education.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also think we need to define internal versus external risk as well. So, in the context of business, the vast majority of the risks, and it's not to say small business is definitely impacted by external factors, right? There's black swan events, like, for example, COVID. Some businesses were propelled to new heights from COVID, and some were absolutely decimated. None of us could have foreseen that coming. But when we talk about the risks of business, there are a lot of internal risks that are at play. There's key person risk. There's bandwidth risk of a business owner biting off more than they can chew and dropping the ball in certain places. There's client risk and customer risk, the ability of dropping off of revenues and other certain things. And I would treat that as an active investment because there are probably more impacts in the short term from the internal risks than there are from external. And on the flip side, when we're talking about acquiring assets, whether it be property or whether it be shares or whether it be crypto, there are a lot more macro risks at play. And sure, you can do a lot of research, get the right advice, understand the intrinsic values and the fundamentals in order to inform your decision. But once you've made those decisions, you're at the mercy of the market. So it's about understanding those risk factors and how that relates back to how you're intrinsically wired as an individual. So for myself personally, Paulina, I prefer to take risks in things that I can control, which is the reason why I bet big on business. And I know I can acquire businesses because I trust myself and my team be able to manufacture value in those businesses over time. In contrast, crypto, and in interest of full disclosure, I've dabbled in crypto, but I have a rule myself that I invest less than 10% of my total net worth in speculative investments. So that includes startup business, cryptocurrency, emerging markets, those kinds of things. And the reason why I do that is because I feel I have very little control over the upside of that, aside from my due diligence of trying to pick those investments. And because of that, it makes me nervous. And because I understand my investor DNA, that's informed my investment philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. Love this. So, final question before we wrap this up, because you've been so generous with your time. Um, Looking back at your journey, what advice would you give yourself, like your younger self? I'm not going to pick an age, but like your younger self who's about to get into this space.
Great question. The advice I'd give myself is to trust myself. I think the biggest reflection that I've had, and it was really only an epiphany that I've had in really the last few years, is to truly and deeply trust myself and my ability to find a way. And I think that being tentative in my earlier years, being unsure, having those kind of self-limiting beliefs and not playing hard out definitely limited my results. But I think that's part of the journey, right? As you go through the journey, as you get experiences, as you win, as you fail, that builds character and that turns you into somebody who can trust yourself. And I think you only get that by going through the motions. So although I would have told myself that, I don't think I would have made any different decisions. And I'm very fortunate to have achieved what I have by now, and I'm very excited for where I'm going to be in, say, 5 or 10 years' time, based on the trajectory that I'm on.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Thank you so much. For everyone who's listening in or tuned into this episode, click below if you want more information about Jackson or follow the journey and claim the scorecard. Very generous of you. Thank you so much. And everyone else, I'm looking forward to catching up with you on the next episode. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much, Jackson. I really appreciate it.